Millionaire husband's mistress hides out in his private mansion, but pregnant wife finds her. Veronica Drummond could still taste the bitter residue of betrayal on her lips as she quietly slid out of the back seat of a sleek black town car. The looming iron gates of the Bel Air mansion in front of her seemed to taunt her pain. She was heavily pregnant with her first child, yet a swirling storm of suspicion and heartbreak propelled her forward. The tabloids had whispered rumors that her ultra-wealthy husband, Robert Drummond, a man celebrated for his brilliant real estate dealings, was hiding a scandalous secret within these marble walls. Veronica didn't yet know the name of the woman. She only knew she couldn't turn back until she uncovered the truth. It all began with a single rumor murmured at an extravagant charity gala in Beverly Hills. Veronica Drummond, known in social circles for her cool grace and impeccable style, was the last person anyone expected to be subjected to gossip. She had married Robert Drummond 5 years ago, and their life was a textbook example of success and luxury. Robert, a sharp-eyed and intelligent magnate in the real estate industry, had bought and sold properties from Manhattan penthouses to beach houses in Malibu. Everyone believed they were the perfect couple until the hush-hush of a mistress turned the Drummond name into a tantalizing conversation piece among the city's elite. Veronica herself had brushed aside the initial rumors. She was carrying their first child, a child so wanted and planned for that it felt inconceivable. Robert would be unfaithful. Nonetheless, the seed planted by persistent whispers refused to be ignored. Late one evening, after Robert had tiptoed around pointed questions about his frequent business trips, Veronica decided to do what she never thought she would. She investigated him. She called her trusted family friend, Anthony Caldwell, an ex-cop turned private investigator, to look into Robert's recent dealings and daily patterns. At first, the discoveries were mundane. Robert was indeed signing deals, meeting clients, and traveling across the country to oversee property acquisitions. Then, there was a discrepancy. On days he was supposedly in San Francisco for meetings, Anthony's intel placed him somewhere far more intriguing, a mansion in Bel Air, not listed under Robert's name. The labyrinth of shell companies and real estate trusts that Robert often used to maintain privacy pointed to something more personal. The deeper Anthony dug, the more it became evident that this wasn't a mere secret investment. There was a woman, a stunning brunette, named Bella Lombardi, living comfortably in that secluded mansion. When Veronica received these findings, something inside her broke. She thought of all the times Robert had missed their prenatal doctor visits, or the nights he came home late, reeking of some unfamiliar perfume. In her stomach, she felt a blend of anger, sadness, and a fierce protective love for the child she carried. As the months wore on, she became certain she needed to confront the situation head-on. The whispers had grown into an unignorable roar in her mind, and despite being 7 months pregnant, she was determined to march up those steps in Bel Air and see for herself. Stepping out of the car on that fateful day, Veronica found herself staring at the tall iron gates. The crisp Los Angeles sunlight gleamed off the pristine wrought iron design, highlighting the Drummond family crest discreetly engraved in the metal. It was the same crest that adorned all of Robert's personal properties, but she hadn't known about this particular house. That fact alone made her hands tremble. The guardhouse was empty, a red light blinking at the security camera that presumably captured every movement. Veronica pressed the intercom button, half expecting a voice to deny her entry. Instead, the gates slowly swung open with a low groan. She felt her heart hammer against her chest. The flickering thought in her mind was, "They must think I'm Robert." With no one to stop her, she walked the gravel driveway, flanked by manicured hedges and precise topiaries. The building that came into view was straight out of a glossy architectural magazine. The mansion soared 3 stories high, boasting a classic European facade with ivory columns and meticulously carved statues. Towering windows hinted at grand rooms filled with opulent furnishings. Everything about it whispered money and secrecy. She rang the doorbell and was greeted by the faint echo that reverberated inside. Her mind reeled. Who would greet her? Would it be Bella? Would it be staff members who recognized the mistress as the true lady of the house? A jolt of panic made her consider turning back, but the weight of her unborn child reminded her of why she was here. After several tense moments, the door creaked open. A young woman with anxious eyes peered out. She wore a neat maid's uniform, her hair pinned tightly in a bun. May I help you?" She stammered, her gaze darting across Veronica's face and then to her pregnant belly. Veronica steadied her voice. "I'm here to see Robert Drummond," she said. "I know this is his property." The maid's surprise was evident. "Mr. Drummond he's not here right now, madam. Perhaps you'd like to come back another time?" Veronica swallowed. Her chest felt tight, but she refused to back down. "Is Miss Lombardi here?" "Bella Lombardi. I have business with her." The maid's expression flickered with panic, confirming Veronica's suspicion. There was no denying the tension in the air. Before the maid could sputter another word, Veronica stepped forward and crossed the threshold into a grand foyer. The polished marble floor, the spiral staircase that swept up to the second level, the glittering chandelier, it was breathtaking, yet its magnificence only fueled Veronica's outrage. She turned to face the startled maid. "I won't leave," Veronica said firmly, "until I speak with Bella Lombardi. You can bring her here, or I will find her myself." Realizing there was little she could do, the maid nodded quickly and muttered, I'll be back." She scurried off, leaving Veronica alone in the grand foyer. Veronica didn't have to wait long. She heard hushed voices drifting from a side corridor. Moments later, Bella Lombardi emerged. Seeing her for the first time, Veronica felt both a punch of jealousy and a strange fascination. Bella was tall and willowy, with flowing dark hair that cascaded around her shoulders. She wore a silk robe that hinted at her figure, exuding a casual confidence. But her eyes were conflicted fear, vulnerability, and defiance, all flickered there. "You must be Veronica," Bella said quietly. Her tone was neither rude nor overly apologetic, but it was laced with caution. Veronica inhaled slowly. Her heart pounded in her ears, but she forced herself to remain calm for the baby's sake. "I am. And you are Bella, the woman Robert has been hiding." Bella's cheeks flushed. "I'm not a secret," she whispered, though the statement rang hollow in the emptiness of the grand foyer. A razor's edge of anger sliced through Veronica. "Then, what are you exactly?" she asked. "Because you're living in a home paid for by my husband's money, a home I never knew existed." Bella looked away, fidgeting with the belt of her robe. Veronica spotted a hint of guilt in her body language. The answer was as plain as day. Bella was a mistress, installed in a lavish property to remain hidden from the public eye and from Veronica herself. Still, Bella's composure was impressive. She was no trembling damsel. "I never wanted it to come to this," she said. "Believe it or not, I asked Robert to be honest with you. I told him I wouldn't stay here if he wasn't upfront about us." Veronica let out a mirthless laugh. "And you expected honesty from a man who sneaks away to keep a mistress? Let me guess, he told you I didn't understand him, that our marriage was failing, that he was unhappy." Bella's silence told Veronica she was right. This was the oldest story in the book. "What I don't understand," Veronica continued, her voice trembling slightly, "is why he would risk this when I'm carrying his child. Does he even think about the baby? Does he even remember that I'm pregnant?" The question seemed to puncture Bella's resolve. Her gaze dropped to Veronica's rounded belly, and her expression softened with what might have been sympathy. But Veronica wasn't interested in pity from the woman who had stepped into her marriage. "I want answers," Veronica said, arms folding over her chest protectively, "and I'm not leaving until I get them." "Where is Robert?" Bella lifted her chin. "He's at a property auction in New York," she answered. "He flew out last night. He'll be back tomorrow." Silence filled the massive foyer again, a silence heavy with heartbreak, fury, and a creeping sense of humiliation that threatened to tear Veronica apart. She realized this was only the beginning, and she wasn't sure she was prepared for everything she might discover in this house that had become a second home for her husband. Bella led Veronica to a lavish living room adorned with white sofas, ornamental vases, and a fireplace crowned by a gold-framed mirror. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Veronica could see the immaculately landscaped garden and the turquoise shimmer of an infinity pool beyond. Veronica perched on the edge of a sofa, feeling the tension coil inside her like a snake. Bella, after pouring tea from a delicate porcelain set, settled into the armchair across from her. The maid vanished, leaving the two women in uncomfortable intimacy. Veronica took a sip of the tea. Her throat felt too constricted to swallow. "How long?" she asked, her voice tight. Bella drew in a breath. "About a year. I met him at a charity function in New York. We connected over his real estate presentations. I was impressed by his knowledge, by him." Veronica bit her tongue to keep from snapping. A year. That meant Robert had carried on this affair while Veronica was undergoing fertility treatments, while they were planning for a baby, while he assured her that everything would be wonderful once they had a child. The realization was crushing. Despite her fury, a tiny voice in Veronica's head whispered for calm. She needed clarity now more than ever. "And you believed every promise he made, didn't you?" Bella's gaze was unsteady. "He told me you two were living separate lives," she admitted. "He said the marriage was more of a business arrangement than a real relationship." "That you," Veronica's eyes flashed. "That I what? Neglected him, drove him away?" She let out a harsh laugh. How convenient for him to spin that story, and how naive to believe him. Bella seemed genuinely wounded by the accusation, though whether from guilt or heartbreak was unclear. "I never wanted to hurt anyone," she said. "I've asked him multiple times about you. I wanted him to come clean. He kept insisting it wasn't the right time, especially with you expecting." The words stung. Robert had used Veronica's pregnancy as an excuse to continue his double life. For a moment, tears threatened to well up in Veronica's eyes, but she forced them back. She'd come here for truth, not to be drowned in heartbreak. "I need to see this place," Veronica said finally, rising to her feet. "Show me the rest of the house." She wanted to understand the world Robert had built with Bella. Reluctantly, Bella led her on a brief tour. They moved through a dining room with a table that could seat 20 guests, a chef's kitchen loaded with top-of-the-line appliances, and a library with tall shelves lined with expensive books. Veronica couldn't help noticing how many small touches of feminine presence there were: fresh flowers, a throw pillow embroidered with the initials BL. On a chaise lounge, a row of designer shoes in a foyer closet. It was as if Bella was the real lady of the house, a role Veronica had believed belonged to her alone. When they reached the master suite on the second floor, Veronica hesitated at the threshold. Through the half-open door, she could see a king-sized bed dressed with plush linens, a balcony that overlooked the manicured lawn, and a lavish ensuite bathroom. Bella's eyes flickered with a hint of embarrassment. I don't think you need to see." Veronica ignored her protest. She stepped into the suite, half expecting to feel physically ill at the sight of the bed where Robert had slept with another woman. Yet, oddly, she felt an odd calm. The fury she had anticipated gave way to a numbness that consumed her entire being. She glanced around, noticing the scattered cosmetics on the vanity, the faint scent of Bella's perfume. The men's suits hung neatly in a separate closet. Robert's suits. The final confirmation that his presence was not just financial, it was tangible, personal, intimate. She turned to Bella. "He comes here often, doesn't he?" Bella nodded, her eyes downcast. "He's often in and out. Sometimes he stays overnight, sometimes just for a few hours." I didn't ask too many questions. Veronica inhaled a shuddering breath. This was the life her husband had set up while she lay alone at night, believing he was out working, making a future for their family. She had hoped that the rumor might be an exaggeration, that Robert was maybe seeing someone, but not to this extent. The reality was more devastating than she'd imagined. The following afternoon, Robert Drummond arrived at the Bel Air mansion with no warning. He had learned of Veronica's unannounced visit via a frantic call from the maid. The moment he walked in past the stunned staff and into the living room, he found his wife seated primly on the sofa and Bella pacing with anxious energy by the fireplace. The tension that erupted was immediate. "Veronica," he breathed, shock contorting his features. "What are you doing here?" Veronica locked eyes with him, forcing steel into her voice, even as her pulse hammered. "What am I doing here? That's my question to you, Robert. What are you doing sneaking around in this house with another woman?" Robert's usually composed demeanor cracked. He glanced at Bella, then at the staff, who were trying and failing to remain discreet in the hallway. "Everyone, leave us," he snapped. The staff scurried away, leaving the three of them alone in the luxurious living space. Robert turned back to Veronica, but she refused to stand or meet him halfway. The baby inside her kicked gently as though sensing the turmoil. "I can explain," Robert said, though the cliched phrase carried little weight. "This isn't what you think, Veronica." Veronica let out a strangled laugh. "Isn't it? Don't insult me, Robert. I have eyes, ears, and proof. Bella's here, in a mansion you secretly own, which, by the way, you denied for months. Exactly how many times did you fly out here while I was at home, pregnant, wondering when you'd come back?" Robert's face paled. Then a flash of anger surged across his features. "Lower your voice," he warned. "In your condition, you shouldn't be getting riled up." That patronizing tone was all it took to push Veronica over the edge. "Don't you dare tell me to calm down," she snapped, standing to face him. Her belly brushed against him, a stark reminder of the child he was also betraying. "You owe me an explanation, and you owe me respect." Bella stood by the fireplace, hands twisting anxiously, tears forming at the edges of her eyes as if she couldn't bear the guilt or tension. "Robert, you said you'd talk to her," she managed, her voice trembling. "I gave you an ultimatum. I said I wouldn't stay here if you didn't tell her the truth." He whipped around to face her. "I was going to. But then the pregnancy came along, and I thought—" "You thought," Veronica interrupted, "that you could keep lying. You thought that you could placate me with talk of fatherhood while you continued this affair." Her voice broke, tears streaming down her cheeks now, unstoppable in their rush. Robert reached out as if to comfort her, but she recoiled. She glanced at Bella, who wrapped her arms around herself, looking as though she wished she could vanish. In that moment, Veronica could see that Bella too was a victim of Robert's manipulations. Though she might have chosen to be with a married man, Robert's skilled ability to hide facts and spin stories had no doubt played a significant role in weaving her into his web. "What is it you want, Veronica?" Robert asked, trying to maintain some semblance of control. "Do you want a divorce? Do you want me to end things with Bella? Tell me what you need so we can handle this quietly." Veronica's head pounded with questions. Did she still want to save this marriage? Could she, after such betrayal? Her baby was due in just 2 months. The idea of dealing with custody arrangements, lawyers, and public humiliation turned her stomach. She needed clarity but found only heartbreak swirling in her chest. "I want you to leave," Veronica said, finally her voice shaking. "I want you out of this house." You can stay in one of your many hotels if you wish. I need time to think. I can't even look at you right now." Robert stiffened. He was accustomed to orchestrating everything in his life, business deals, staff, even women on his terms. Now he was cornered. After a long pause, he nodded curtly, shooting Bella a glance that was part regret and part warning. Then he stalked out of the room. Veronica sank back onto the sofa, tears still leaking down her face. She felt drained, exhausted. Bella approached cautiously. "I'll leave too," she offered softly. "I never meant to tear your family apart." Veronica wiped at her cheeks. "Would leaving fix this?" she asked, her voice raw. "If you really believe he loves you, do you think you can walk away just because I showed up? Because he lied?" Bella wavered, looking more wounded than ever. "I don't know," she said. "I'm not sure what to do." Neither woman spoke for a while. The silence was ironically intimate, binding them in their shared betrayal. For years, Veronica had believed that wealth, success, and love were the cornerstones of her perfect life. Now, everything was in shambles. A week crawled by after that explosive confrontation. Veronica remained in the mansion, surprisingly. Bella, out of a sense of shame or duty, had retreated to a guest suite at the far end of the house. Robert stayed elsewhere, presumably at a penthouse suite he kept in downtown La. The tabloids were buzzing with speculation. Someone had captured a snippet of Veronica's visit to the Bel Air property, fueling rumors of a scandal. Yet no one outside the house knew the full story. Veronica had no intention of playing the part of a docile, wronged wife. She had her attorney, John Maxwell, come to the mansion to discuss her options. She needed to consider legal protection, both for herself and the unborn child. In a hushed conversation, John explained the complexities of a potential divorce, the division of assets, and the dramatic effect such a story would have on Robert's public image. He warned that if they weren't careful, the media would pounce on the scandal, and that might cause the Drummonds further distress, especially with a baby on the way. Yet in her heart, Veronica still felt torn. She despised what Robert had done. She feared trusting him again would be a fool's errand. But a small voice inside her reminded her that they had built a life together. She still loved him, or at least the version of him she thought existed. Could there be a glimmer of redemption? Late one night, as Veronica paced the halls to quell her insomnia, she found Bella on the back terrace overlooking the pool. The younger woman hugged a shawl around her shoulders, her expression distant, as though she were lost in regrets. "You should probably head back to your real home," Veronica said softly, joining her. "Or at least, a place that isn't here. This house shouldn't belong to you or me right now." Bella turned, eyes glistening. "I have nowhere else to go," she admitted. "I gave up my apartment months ago because Robert insisted I stay here. He didn't want to waste money renting another place," he said. Veronica let out a tired breath. "You could find somewhere," she said more gently. "He'd pay for it if you pressed him. If he's given you this place, he's not going to let you live in a gutter." Bella hesitated. "I was an interior designer before all of this," she said. "I gave up my biggest clients to follow him. I believed we had a future. Now, it's embarrassing to admit how naive I was." An odd sympathy flickered in Veronica. She realized that while she had security, her own wealth, her name, and a legitimate marriage, Bella's position was far more precarious. She was an interloper who had wagered her career and reputation on a man who turned out to be a liar. "I'm sorry," Veronica said. "I can't say I forgive you, but no one deserves to be strung along like that." Bella nodded slowly, tears escaping her careful composure. "I'm sorry too. I wish I could say you deserve better, but you already know that." In the hush of that moment, the two women, though once adversaries in love, found a fragile bond in their shared disillusionment. They stayed there under the starry sky, neither speaking, letting the gentle la breeze carry away the tension, if only for a moment. That fragile calm was shattered the next day when Robert returned, unannounced, accompanied by a high-profile lawyer of his own. He found Veronica in the mansion's study, her body clad in a loose but elegant dress that accommodated her growing belly. She was reviewing paperwork on a laptop when the pair strode in. "We need to talk," Robert said, glancing at the belly that was so unmistakably carrying his child. Veronica closed the laptop. She felt a mixture of anger and resignation. "Yes, we do." His lawyer, a stern-faced man named Harold Pierce, cleared his throat. "Mistress Drummond, it's in everyone's best interest to reach an amicable agreement regarding the estate, the child," and Veronica's eyes flared. "Excuse me? You think we're going to carve up my future like a business deal right here, right now?" Robert held up a hand to quell the tension. "This is just preliminary," he said, looking uncomfortable. "I want to ensure you and the baby are provided for, whether or not we remain together." Veronica's heart twisted at his neutral phrasing, "whether or not we remain together." It was as if he was signing off a new real estate venture rather than talking about his marriage and child. She swallowed her emotion. "And Bella? Are you going to keep her stashed away while you play family with me? Or did your lawyer tell you that might be detrimental to your public image?" Robert's jaw tightened. He cast a quick glance toward the door, as though expecting Bella to appear at any moment. "I ended things with Bella," he said. "She'll move out as soon as she can." An unexpected wave of sadness hit Veronica. She realized how easily Robert could discard Bella once she became an inconvenience. It was a chilling reminder of how, to him, people could be bought or sold like properties. "Out of respect for your condition," Robert continued, "I think it's best we handle this quietly. We can release a statement that we're separating, or whatever you prefer." Veronica stood, the desk separating her from Robert and Harold. "Whatever I prefer, that's the problem, Robert. You've never once asked me what I prefer. You took it upon yourself to shape our life with your deception. And now you're offering me hush money." Robert clenched his fists. "That's not what this is, Veronica." She locked eyes with him, ignoring Harold's attempts to interject. "It feels like it is. Because if you truly respected me, we'd be dealing with this face to face, without your lawyer here to draw up amicable agreements. Our marriage wasn't a business transaction, at least, not to me." Harold cleared his throat again. "Miss S. Drummond, I think we're getting off track. The reason for my presence is to ensure enough." Veronica's voice cut through the tension. She gathered her papers and marched out of the study, leaving Robert and Harold staring after her. In the hall, she ran into Bella, who must have heard some of the argument. Bella looked pale. "I'll leave today," she whispered. "I can't stay here while this is happening. But I want you to know, I never sought to destroy your marriage. I genuinely thought Robert and I—" She paused, tears threatening. "I was foolish. I know that." Veronica pressed her hand to her swollen belly. "Yes, you were," she answered honestly. "But you aren't the only one. Robert is the root cause here, not you alone. Just go find a life for yourself that isn't built on lies." Bella nodded, watery gratitude in her eyes. Within the hour she left, a single suitcase in hand. As the mansion door closed behind her, Veronica wondered if she'd ever see her again. Despite everything, a small part of her hoped Bella would find a better path. In the weeks that followed, Veronica began preparing for the baby's arrival without Robert by her side. She moved back into their main home in Beverly Hills, refusing to see or speak with him. Through John Maxwell, she negotiated a temporary separation agreement, ensuring that she had financial freedom and sole decision-making power for the child's well-being. The media frenzy grew. Paparazzi snapped photos of Veronica, her baby bump ever more visible as she emerged from doctor's appointments. Rumors circulated that Robert was battling to keep the story under wraps to preserve his empire's public image. Stocks for Drummond real estate wobbled, with speculation swirling around the personal drama of its founder. One day, as Veronica sat in the nursery recently painted a soft cream color, she received a call from an unexpected source. Anthony Caldwell, the private investigator who had originally uncovered Robert's secret. "Veronica," Anthony said, his tone serious, "I discovered something else about the Bel Air property. It was purchased not just for Bella." Veronica felt her heart skip a beat. "What do you mean?" "Robert set up multiple trusts. One in Bella's name, yes, but also several others that don't seem to be traceable directly to him. I'm worried there might be more secrets, more women perhaps." Veronica clutched the phone tightly. Could Robert's betrayal be even bigger than she realized? She felt the baby shift inside her, as though sensing her turmoil. "Thank you, Anthony. Keep investigating." Hanging up, she stared at the crib she'd ordered months ago. Her hand lingered over the soft baby blankets. A wave of protectiveness washed over her. This child would arrive soon, and she had to ensure a stable future. She realized the gravity of her predicament. Was Robert a serial cheater, using wealth to keep multiple women in comfort? Could she ever trust him again? Days later, Veronica confronted Robert at a discreet restaurant in West Hollywood, an arrangement orchestrated by John Maxwell to keep paparazzi at bay. Robert arrived, looking haggard, his shirt uncharacteristically wrinkled. He led Veronica to a private booth in the back. "I heard from Anthony," Veronica began, not wasting a second. "He found more shell companies, more trusts. Are there other women?" Robert rubbed his temples, avoiding her gaze. "Veronica, I'm already losing my mind over this scandal. Please don't assume the worst." She let out a humorless laugh. "Oh, I'm past assuming. I'm confirming. Is Bella the only one, or have you done this before?" He stayed silent for a beat too long, which was answer enough. Shame flickered across his features. Veronica swallowed down her rising nausea. "So, you've had other affairs?" It wasn't a question, but a statement of grim realization. Robert leaned forward, his voice low. "Bella was the only long-term one," he pleaded. "The others were. They didn't last. Nothing emotional, more like, 'That's enough,'" Veronica whispered, though tears began glistening in her eyes. Hearing the gory details would only salt her wounds. "I should have known. The signs were there, but I believed you." He reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "Veronica," he said, sounding desperate for the first time, "I know I'm a horrible person in your eyes, but I still care about you and the baby. Let me make this right. I want to be there for you, for our child." She regarded him with heartbreak etched into every line of her face. "Your presence in my life right now only hurts me," she said. "I don't see how that helps the baby. We both know you only came clean because you got caught." His shoulders slumped. "I know. But that doesn't mean I can't be better. Please, Veronica, let me try to be the father our child deserves." She closed her eyes, fighting back sobs. The baby was due in just a few weeks now, and she couldn't deny that the child had the right to know its father. Yet every cell in her body recoiled at the idea of letting Robert near her. "I need space." "You'll get updates from my lawyer," Veronica said finally, her voice trembling. Then she stood and left, ignoring the stares from the few patrons who recognized the pregnant wife of the scandalized millionaire. As Veronica's due date crept closer, her physical discomfort magnified her emotional strain. She was fiercely independent, but her heartbreak had taken a toll. Sleep was elusive, and her appetite waned. She had to remind herself to eat well for the baby's sake. Her friend and lawyer, John Maxwell, urged her to finalize divorce proceedings or a legal separation, but she balked at the notion of such a life-altering decision on the brink of childbirth. "Give me a little more time," she kept telling him. Meanwhile, Robert launched a charm offensive. He began sending lavish gifts to the Beverly Hills house bouquets of white orchids, baby clothes from designer brands, a handwritten letter begging forgiveness. Veronica ignored them all, letting them accumulate in the foyer like hollow symbols of contrition. One afternoon, as she relaxed in the living room, Veronica felt the baby kick fiercely. It was painful, unlike the gentle flutters she was used to. Alarmed, she called her obstetrician, Dr. Christine Park, who advised her to come in immediately for a checkup. At the hospital, she was informed that stress was impacting her blood pressure. Dr. Park gently warned that if Veronica didn't find a way to lower her stress, there could be complications. That night, back home, Veronica broke down in tears. She felt trapped between her fury and her unborn child's need for stability. In desperation, she called Robert. She couldn't deny that some part of her needed him, if only to steady her nerves. He arrived quickly, pacing the foyer in anxious concern. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice cracking with genuine worry. Veronica wavered, tears shimmering in her eyes. "They said I need rest and less stress," she managed. "I can't keep doing this alone. I'm so close to giving birth. I don't know what to do, Robert." Without hesitation, Robert gathered her into his arms. She didn't resist. She sobbed into his shoulder, her body trembling. For a moment, she allowed herself to remember the man she'd loved, the man whose arms once felt like the safest place on earth. Only a week later, it happened. Veronica's water broke unexpectedly late in the evening. A sharp pang of fear lanced through her. Robert was there. He had insisted on staying in a guest room. In a flurry of panic and excitement, they rushed to the hospital. Nurses whisked Veronica into a delivery suite, hooking her up to monitors. Labor pains seized her, and she cried out. Robert squeezed her hand, his face etched with frantic concern. The hours that followed were both agonizing and transcendent. Veronica labored through contractions, tears streaming down her cheeks as she glared at Robert, who tried to soothe her with words of encouragement. Despite her anger and heartbreak, in those moments of raw vulnerability, she needed him. And he stayed, unwavering in his support, whispering apologies and endearments. Finally, after what felt like a lifetime, the cries of a newborn filled the room. Veronica collapsed against the pillows, sweaty and exhausted. The doctor placed a tiny, wailing baby boy in her arms. In that instant, nothing else mattered, neither mistress nor mansion. The baby's tiny fingers curled around Veronica's thumb, anchoring her to the present, to a love that was pure and untainted. Robert gazed at the child, tears tracking down his face. It was the first time Veronica had seen him cry. She felt an emotional tangle of resentment, compassion, and an undeniable bond because this was their child. No matter their mistakes, they had created something perfect together. "I'm so sorry," Robert whispered, pressing a trembling kiss to Veronica's forehead and then to the baby's. "I promise I'll be the father he needs, whatever it takes." Veronica nodded numbly, tears streaming. She didn't have the energy or will to respond with harsh words. For that moment, at least, they were united by the miracle of new life. Days stretched into weeks. Veronica recovered from childbirth at home, where she hired a professional nurse to help with the newborn. Robert, determined to prove himself, was a constant presence, changing diapers, rocking the baby to sleep, and soothing. Veronica's fears when postpartum nerves overwhelmed her. The tabloids eventually moved on to newer scandals, allowing a relative peace to settle over the Drummond household. But the underlying tension between Veronica and Robert remained like a fault line. Late-night feedings often led to hushed conversations in the dimly lit nursery, where Robert tried to apologize yet again, but Veronica's silence or clipped responses revealed the lingering hurt. The baby, named James after Veronica's grandfather, provided a buffer, a reason to remain civil, if not fully reconciled. Eventually, Bella Lombardi sent an email. She had found new work in Chicago, ironically designing the interiors for a boutique hotel. She wanted to assure Veronica she wouldn't bother them again, but also thanked her for the strange sort of empathy Veronica had shown. Reading Bella's words, Veronica felt a quiet relief. Perhaps Bella would be all right, forging her own path far from LA's glitz. Still, the knowledge of Robert's multiple affairs haunted Veronica. As she stared at James sleeping peacefully, she wondered, could we start anew? Could trust ever be rebuilt? She wished she had a simple answer. 2 months after James's birth, Veronica felt a renewed sense of resolve. She'd spent countless nights reflecting on her marriage, her child, and her future. While the sting of betrayal remained, a curious thought nagged her. Could Robert truly change? She saw him devote himself wholeheartedly to fatherhood. She saw glimpses of the man she once fell in love with, the one who was protective, caring, ambitious yet tender in private moments. One evening, as the golden sun dipped over the horizon, Veronica asked Robert to meet her in the garden. The soft buzz of cicadas filled the air. Robert arrived, carefully carrying a bundled-up James in his arms. Veronica patted a bench beside her, and he gently placed James in a nearby bassinet before sitting down. She took a shaky breath. "I'm not sure if I can forgive everything," she began, her gaze fixed on the sleeping baby. "But I see you trying, and I want to be fair." He nodded, his expression earnest. "I'll do anything, Veronica. Therapy, counseling, whatever it takes to earn a second chance." She studied him in the fading light. A complex swirl of love, pain, and lingering hope churned within her. "We'll take it day by day," she said finally. "I won't pretend everything is fine. We need professional help. We need honesty. But for James's sake, and maybe for us, I'm willing to try." A tremor of relief rippled through Robert's body. He reached out to take her hand, and this time she let him. They sat there until the sun fully vanished, breathing in the possibilities of a fragile new beginning. A month later, Veronica summoned the courage to return to the Bel Air mansion for the first time since her initial discovery of Bella. This time she went with Robert, in broad daylight, baby James cooing softly in her arms. The staff, uncertain of how to greet them, were deferential and subdued. Walking through the opulent rooms felt like revisiting a painful memory. Robert trailed behind her, watching her reaction. She noticed the changes. Bella's personal touches were gone. The house felt vacant, stripped of anything that suggested it had once been a romantic hideaway. Eventually, they ended up in the master suite. James wriggled in Veronica's arms, and Robert gently lifted him to give her a break. She wandered to the balcony, gazing at the manicured gardens. The last time she stood here, her heart was in pieces. Robert cleared his throat behind her. "This place is empty now," he said softly. "I was thinking of selling it." Veronica nodded. "Good idea," she replied, her voice distant. "This house has nothing to do with our future." Robert wrapped an arm around her shoulders, carefully balancing James with his other. "And our future? Is there a chance for it?" Veronica looked at the baby, then at Robert. "There's a chance, but it's going to take work, Robert. Real work." He nodded, gazing at her with an unfamiliar humility. "I'm ready." True to his promise, Robert started attending counseling sessions with Veronica. They found a therapist, Dr. Clara Rosen, who specialized in marital conflict and infidelity. In the cozy therapy room, lined with soft cushions and tasteful art, they hashed out the tangled emotions festering between them. Veronica discovered that Robert's drive to prove himself in the ruthless real estate world stemmed from deep-seated insecurities. Each affair, though inexcusable, seemed to fill a void in his constant quest for validation. As the sessions progressed, Robert confronted his own failings and the destructive pattern he'd allowed to flourish. For Veronica, the challenge lay in rebuilding trust and addressing her own sense of self-worth. She admitted that she had often played the role of the polished, perfect wife, never expressing dissatisfaction or conflict. She realized that her silence might have made it easier for Robert to hide his transgressions, though it never justified his betrayal. Still, therapy was no magical cure. They argued frequently, especially when old wounds reopened. But gradually, a fragile but genuine closeness began to emerge. They developed new routines, date nights free from the influence of wealth and status, open conversations about finances, and phone check policies to ensure transparency. Meanwhile, baby James thrived. His innocent gurgles and tiny smiles reminded them daily of what they stood to lose if they allowed the past to consume them. Parenting together forged a sense of teamwork that spilled over into the rest of their relationship. 6 months after James's birth, his first wobbly steps sent a jolt of excitement through Veronica and Robert as they stood side by side in the spacious living room. Their cheers and clapping echoed off the high ceilings, momentarily washing away the memories of the emotional battle that had once defined their every breath. In this fleeting snapshot of pure joy, they resembled a loving family unburdened by ghosts of the past. But the shadows that lingered in the background had not entirely dissipated. They had merely lost some of their grip. Therapy sessions were still ongoing, difficult, raw encounters where Veronica and Robert confronted the lies, the broken trust, and the pain they both carried. They had days when they felt closer than ever, united by James's innocence and the flickering hope of rebuilding what had nearly been destroyed. On other days, the tension was palpable, a reminder that love and forgiveness sometimes demanded more than a single apology or pledge. Despite the challenges, every milestone James reached became an anchor that kept them tethered to the possibility of a future that might still hold happiness. As he began babbling new sounds and attempting his unsteady steps, both parents brimmed with pride. Robert regularly filmed these moments on his phone, a keepsake to remind him that life's greatest treasures weren't found in business deals or secret mansions, but in ordinary, tender acts of family life. Veronica couldn't deny she felt a sense of peace seeing Robert so devoted to their child. It was a stark departure from the distant, preoccupied man who had once prioritized clandestine meetings and property showings over their marriage. Amid this hopeful yet fragile truce, Robert made a significant move. He listed the Bel Air mansion for sale. He took it upon himself to speak directly with the real estate agents, ensuring that the transaction was handled as discreetly as possible. The mansion, once a glittering emblem of betrayal, had become an eyesore in his memory, a monument to everything he had nearly lost. Veronica, for her part, refused to visit the property anymore. The one trip back with Robert and James had been more than enough. The images of Bella's perfume lingering in the corridors and the echo of her own angry footsteps haunted her too deeply. As the sale gathered momentum, Robert insisted that the net proceeds go into a trust for James's education and eventual future, a symbolic act of accountability. When he initially brought the idea to Veronica, he did so with a palpable mixture of trepidation and longing for redemption. Veronica heard him out quietly. She sat at the kitchen island, absently drumming her fingers on the marble countertop, her eyes drifting to a cheerful painting of the ocean they'd purchased during their honeymoon. It seemed a lifetime ago, and yet here they were, attempting to bridge the gap between past and present. "I think it's a good idea," she said finally, glancing up. "But I have one condition." Robert braced himself, a flicker of anxiety tightening his jaw. "Name it." Veronica took a breath, recalling Bella's uncertain departure, remembering her own pain when she discovered how many women existed in precarious situations, whether through manipulation, misguided love, or desperation. "I want a portion of the profits to be donated to organizations that help vulnerable women. Shelters, crisis hotlines, those places. I'd like to do something that ensures no one else is left stranded with no support system." Robert's shoulders slumped, relief mingling with respect. This was the kind of gesture that exemplified why he had once fallen in love with Veronica, her capacity for empathy. Even after the deepest betrayal, "I'll make it happen," he promised without hesitation. In the weeks leading up to the closing, Veronica found herself strangely reflective. At night, once James was asleep and the house was quiet, she would sit on the sofa, gazing at old family photos, as well as the blank spaces on the walls where she once considered hanging pictures of a hoped-for perfect life. She realized that the Bel Air mansion was more than just a property. It was a physical reminder of the heartbreak that had nearly unraveled everything she held dear. Selling it was more than a financial transaction. It was a ritual of letting go. It symbolized a final step in dismantling the false narrative Robert had built around their marriage. When the day of closing finally arrived, Robert carefully reviewed the documents in his home office, making sure every last detail reflected Veronica's request to support charitable causes. The hush in the room was interrupted only by James's soft cooing in the next room over. In that moment, Robert felt the weight of how close he had come to losing the chance to hear those beautiful baby sounds in a home that welcomed him as a husband and father. He signed each page with shaking hands, aware that no signature, no legal form could fully erase the pain he had caused. Yet this act represented a genuine step toward reparation. After the ink dried, he found Veronica in the nursery, humming a gentle lullaby to James. The baby's eyelids drooped in drowsy contentment as he clung to his mother's finger. Robert paused in the doorway, absorbing the tranquil scene. It struck him how easily this could have slipped through his grasp if Veronica had chosen to cut him out of their lives completely. Clearing his throat softly, he approached her and handed over the envelope containing the final paperwork. Their eyes met his filled with cautious optimism, hers guarded but not unreachable. In that unspoken exchange, they acknowledged everything that had happened. The illusions they once clung to were gone, replaced by a fragile but tangible hope. Veronica glanced at the top page. Her name, as well as the names of the charities, were clearly printed. A portion of the proceeds would be securely placed in James's trust. A separate portion was allocated for the women's support network Veronica had requested. She closed the envelope and looked up at Robert. "Thank you," she said quietly. It wasn't a grand statement of forgiveness, but it was real gratitude for his willingness to listen, to act on something that mattered deeply to her. He nodded, exhaling as though a heavy weight had lifted, even if only slightly. "You don't have to thank me. This is the least I can do." Veronica gently placed a sleeping James in his crib and turned to face her husband. Their eyes lingered on each other, emotions swirling pain, regret, longing, and the smallest flicker of trust. They both knew that the sale of the Bel Air mansion would not magically heal their wounds, but it closed a chapter they had been stuck reading for far too long. Though uncertain, the future now belonged to them again, free from the shadow of that house. That evening, as they celebrated quietly at home, sharing a simple home-cooked meal and keeping watch over James, they discussed plans and set new ground rules for their marriage. They talked about therapy sessions, upcoming parental milestones, and ways to reconnect as a couple beyond their role as parents. Each promise was laced with realism. They acknowledged that rebuilding trust was a continuous effort, not a one-time fix. For Veronica, this was the first time she truly imagined a tomorrow with Robert that wasn't clouded by suspicion or heartbreak. The mansion's shadow no longer loomed over them. As Robert cleared the dinner plates, she briefly thought of Bella, hoping the woman had found a fresh start in Chicago, wishing her no ill will. Above all, Veronica felt a cautious optimism. She was stepping into the unknown, but she was doing so with her eyes wide open, her baby secure in her arms, and her husband finally walking beside her rather than forging paths in secret. The decision about tomorrow was a choice to embrace the potential for healing, even after betrayal. And in that choice, there was power to create a life more authentic and resilient than any they had known before. One evening, Veronica found herself alone in the Beverly Hills home, sifting through old photographs. Pictures of her and Robert, in happier times, smiling at their wedding reception, traveling through Europe, hugging each other on the porch of their first marital home. She realized she could not erase the past, but she could learn from it. She heard the front door open and Robert's voice softly calling, "Veronica? James is asleep in the car seat. I'll bring him in." She smiled at how seamlessly fatherhood fit him now. He was no longer the smug millionaire who believed he could juggle love and lies without consequence. Pain and reflection had changed him. As Robert entered with the sleeping baby in his arms, Veronica rose to meet him. They settled James in his crib, then stood side by side watching their son's peaceful slumber. She felt Robert's hand reach for hers. Without pulling away, she threaded her fingers through his. Their marriage might never be perfect, and the scars of betrayal might never fully fade. But in that soft, warm moment, with their child safe and sound, Veronica realized that healing was possible if they chose it together. Thank you for joining us on this roller coaster journey of love, betrayal, heartbreak, and ultimate resilience. We witnessed Veronica confront the brutal reality of her husband's infidelity, discover the hidden secrets buried in a mansion's marble hallways, and grapple with the question of whether love can survive deep betrayal. Throughout it all, the arrival of their newborn baby, pure and full of promise, served as the catalyst for transformation. The story reminds us that relationships are fragile, but with honest introspection and dedicated effort, redemption is never out of reach. If you were captivated by this emotional saga, don't forget to hit like on the video, share it with your friends who love drama and unexpected twists, and of course, subscribe to our channel so you never miss another gripping tale. Your support helps us continue bringing you stories that stir the soul and spark the imagination. Stay tuned for more.
What does the world see when they look at Emma Vance? They see the perfect polished wife of Jason Thorne, the real estate titan. They see a woman who hosts flawless dinners, remembers every birthday, and smiles silently behind her billionaire husband. Jason called her his greatest asset in public. In private, he called her decoration. And when he found a newer decoration, he filed for divorce, labeling her as useless on his way out. He left her with nothing. He thought he had erased her. What he actually did was unleash the most brilliant strategic mind the country had ever seen. This isn't a story about revenge. It's a story about a hostile takeover. The penthouse at 15 Central Park West wasn't a home. It was a statement. It was 8,000 square feet of Arctic white marble glass walls overlooking a kingdom of lights and art so expensive it was rumored to be insured by a small nation. This was the domain of Jason Thorne, founder and CEO of Thorne Legacy Properties. A man who didn't just build skyscrapers, he carved his name into the skyline. And in this kingdom, Emma Vance was the silent, flawless manager. To the outside world, she was the enviable Mrs. Thorne. To Jason, she was an accessory he had acquired a decade ago, one that had in his mind depreciated in value. "Emma, the Callahans are at table 3, Jason would murmur at a gala, not even looking at her. "He needs another scotch. She's allergic to shellfish. Handle it." And she would. Emma handled everything. She wasn't just his wife. She was his unsalaried 24/7 executive assistant, social strategist, and emotional buffer. She was the one who remembered the names of his investors' children. She was the one who reviewed his quarterly reports at 2 a.m., catching a decimal point error by the CFO that would have cost the company $8 million. She was the one who ghost-wrote the charismatic off-the-cuff speech he gave at the Global Innovators Summit. Jason, of course, took the credit. She's good at parties. He'd laugh to his friends over brandy. Keeps the house running. Beyond that, not a single ambitious bone in her body. Useless, really, in the real world. Emma heard the whispers. She saw the condescending smiles. She was the quiet, unassuming arts major she'd actually double majored in computational linguistics who had married well. But Emma had a secret. In a small windowless room behind the laundry, a space Jason dismissed as her hobby closet, was a workstation that looked like it belonged to Mission Control. 3 monitors, a custom-built server rack, and whiteboards covered in algorithms so complex they looked like a new language. For 2 years, Emma had been building Aura. It started as a private project, a way to keep her mind sharp. She was fascinated by inefficiency. Jason's company, for all its bluster, was a logistical nightmare. They hemorrhaged money on supply chain management using an archaic system Emma herself had quietly designed for him in their first year of marriage, a fact he'd long forgotten. Aura was her solution. It was a predictive logistics platform and AI that didn't just track shipments. It anticipated global events, port strikes, weather patterns, material shortages, and rerouted supply chains before a crisis hit. It was brilliant, it was revolutionary, and it was hers. The breaking point came at the annual Thorne Foundation benefit. Emma had spent 3 months orchestrating the $10 million event. Every flower, every seating chart, every press release was curated by her. Jason took the stage, his custom-tailored suit catching the light. He beamed, accepting the Humanitarian of the Year award. "I have to thank my incredible team," he boomed. "And of course, my wife Emma." He gestured to her, and the spotlight found her at the table. She smiled a strained, practiced expression. "She is the inspiration for all this," Jason continued, "proving that even those who aren't boardroom material can contribute in their own way. She's the best event planner a man could ask for." The room applauded politely. It was a pat on the head delivered with a microphone. Later that evening, Emma was cornered by the bar by a strikingly beautiful woman in a crimson dress. Her name was Serafina Rothschild. She was new money, a venture capitalist with a reputation for sharp teeth. "You have the patience of a saint, Emma." Serafina said, her voice a low purr. She swirled her champagne. "Jason is a force. It must be exhausting standing in a shadow that big." Emma gave a tight smile. "I prefer the shade." Serafina hummed, unconvinced. "Some of us are built for the sun." As the night ended, Emma watched Jason laughing with Serafina by the valet. His laugh was different, louder, more genuine than the one he used with her. He put his hand on the small of Serafina's back, and it wasn't a polite gesture. Emma felt the marble floor drop out from under her. She retreated to her hobby closet that night. The glow of the monitors was her only comfort. She typed, and as the code for Aura compiled, a new line of thought began to compile in her mind. Aura wasn't just a project anymore. It was an escape plan. The end came faster than a guillotine. It wasn't a fight. Jason didn't do messy. He did corporate restructuring. 3 days after the benefit, Emma was woken not by her alarm, but by the sound of voices in the living room. She walked out, her silk robe clutched tight, to find Jason and 2 men in severe black suits. One of them, she recognized with a jolt of ice, was Harrison Kane, Jason's lead attorney. "Emma, you're up. Good," Jason said, not looking up from his phone. He was already dressed, cufflinks gleaming. "Jason, what's going on?" "It's 6 a.m. Jason finally looked at her. His eyes were flat, devoid of any warmth. They were the eyes he used to terminate a bad contract. "The marriage isn't working, Emma. It hasn't been for a long time. I'm filing for divorce." Emma's breath hitched. What? Just like that after the benefit, Jason, we can— No, we can't. He cut her off. This is a formality. Harrison has the papers. The lawyer stepped forward and placed a thick leather-bound document on the marble coffee table. It landed with a soft, heavy thud. As you know, Emma, Harrison Kane said, his voice a dry monotone, you signed a prenuptial agreement on March 12, 2014. Yes, I know, Emma stammered. Jason has been more than generous, the lawyer continued, tapping the document. He is offering a one-time lump sum payment of $500,000 contingent on your immediate vacating of the premises and a comprehensive lifetime non-disclosure agreement. Emma's head spun. $500,000. It sounded like a lot, but in their world it was what Jason spent on watches in a year. It was an insult. Jason, this is our life, she pleaded, her voice trembling. 10 years. I helped you build this. The strategy for the Hudson Yards bid. That was my research. The original logistics code. Jason finally laughed. It was a sharp, ugly sound. Your research, Emma, you organized my files. You made coffee. Let's not be delusional. You are a cost, not an asset. You have been useless to the company's bottom line for a decade. Useless. The word hit her like a slap. Look around you, Jason said, gesturing to the penthouse. This is my life. You were just living in it. Now you're not. Serafina will be moving in next week. Serafina, the woman in the red dress, the snake in the garden. You're leaving me. For her. I'm upgrading Emma, Jason said, adjusting his tie. Serafina is my equal. She's a partner. She understands the real world. You were a lovely phase. But it's over. I won't sign this. Emma whispered, defiance flickering. I'll fight this. Harrison Kane sighed as if bored. Fight it with what, Mrs. Thorne? Your joint accounts were frozen an hour ago. The credit cards you hold are supplementary to Jason's primary account, which have been canceled. The hobby closet you work in, all that equipment was purchased by Thorne Legacy. It stays. As of 9 a.m. this morning, you have no access to Jason's assets. This $500,000 is all you will ever see. He was trapping her. He was locking her out of her own life, her own work. The server. Emma's mind raced to Aura. The data. Wiped, Jason said simply. Company policy. Can't have proprietary data leaving the building. Emma felt the blood drain from her face. Aura. 2 years of her life's work. Gone. Wiped. He hadn't even known what he was destroying. He just did it to be cruel. You have until noon, Jason said, picking up his briefcase. My security will escort you out. He walked to the door, pausing. Don't try to contact me. All future correspondence goes through Harrison. Goodbye, Emma. He left. He didn't look back. Emma stood alone in the marble cavern, the divorce papers staring at her from the table. He had taken everything. Her home, her money, her dignity, and worst of all, her work. He'd called her useless. He'd left her with nothing. But Jason Thorne, for all his business acumen, had made one catastrophic mistake. He assumed that because he had wiped the server, he had wiped the idea. He forgot that Emma was the source code. She walked into the laundry room past the now dark hobby closet. She picked up her personal laptop from a charging port, a simple, unremarkable machine he'd never bothered to look at. She had emailed herself the core Aura kernel a week prior. A backup. Just in case. Jason hadn't just divorced his useless wife. He had just created his biggest competitor. The 3 months that followed were a blur of beige walls and instant ramen. Emma Vance went from a penthouse on Central Park West to a 400-square-foot fifth-floor walk-up in Astoria, Queens. The check for $500,000 felt like monopoly money. After paying taxes and the retainer for a divorce lawyer who looked at her with pity, she was left with barely enough to survive for a year. The NDA was ironclad. She couldn't speak a word about Jason Serafina or her contributions to Thorne Legacy. She was a ghost. Jason's reach was long. Every job she applied for, even low-level data analysis roles, resulted in a polite, swift rejection. "You're just not the right fit." She was blacklisted. Emma sat on her second-hand sofa, her laptop, her only valuable possession, glowing in the dark. She had a choice: fade into obscurity or build. She chose to build. She pulled up the Aura kernel. It was the heart, but it needed a body. She needed a partner. She needed someone who hated the corporate world as much as she now did. She made a call. "Marcus Cole?" His voice was rough, like he'd been gargling gravel. "Marcus, it's Emma. Emma Vance. Well, just Emma now." There was a long pause. "Emma Thorne. Wow, that's a voice from the dead. What's it been 12 years since the MIT lab?" Marcus Cole was the only person who had ever truly seen her brilliance. He was a programming genius, a digital anarchist who believed code could change the world. He'd dropped out 2 semesters before graduation to avoid selling his soul. He now ran a tiny, failing IT consultancy out of a garage in Brooklyn. "I need your help, Marcus," she said. She met him at a 24-hour diner. She laid it all out. The divorce, the useless comment, the blacklisting. And then she opened her laptop. She showed him Aura. Marcus stared at the screen, his half-eaten burger forgotten. He scrolled through the code, his eyes widening. "Ellie," he whispered, using her old nickname. This is predictive modeling on a level I've never seen. This isn't just logistics, this is a crystal ball. This could disrupt everything. Amazon, FedEx, the entire global supply chain." He wiped the server, Emma said, her voice tight. "Called it proprietary data and trashed it. But he didn't know I had the kernel." Marcus looked up, and a slow, dangerous grin spread across his face. "He called you useless." He pushed his plate away. "Okay, I'm in. Let's go burn his empire to the ground." They incorporated the next day Aura Logics. They worked out of his garage, fueled by stale coffee and righteous anger. Emma was the architect rebuilding Aura from the kernel up, making it stronger, faster, more intuitive. Marcus was the engineer building the infrastructure, the security, and the user interface. For 6 months they coded. Emma sold her jewelry, the last vestiges of her old life, to pay for server space. They were building a multi-billion-dollar platform on a shoestring budget. Then they hit the wall funding. They needed to scale. They needed a sales team. They needed to get out of the garage. They started the pitch deck circuit. It was a disaster. The first VC, a slick man in a Patagonia vest, barely looked up from his phone. "So let me get this straight. You're a divorced housewife. And you," he gestured to Marcus, "are an IT guy. And you built an AI that's better than Google's right." The second one was worse. "It's a cute algorithm, Mrs. Thorne." "Oh, Ms. Vance, sorry. But we're just not investing in the jilted wife narrative right now." They received 27 rejections. Their money was gone. They were 2 weeks from having to sell their servers for parts. On a desperate final attempt, Emma emailed a name she'd found on a top 50 women in tech list. This woman wasn't a VC. She was a legend, a recluse. The first female engineer at Intel who had built a quiet empire and disappeared. Her name was Diana Hayes. Emma didn't expect a reply. She got one 10 minutes later. "My office. Tomorrow. 8 a.m. Don't be late." Diana Hayes's office was the top floor of the Chrysler Building. The woman herself was in her late 60s, with sharp gray eyes and an aura of absolute authority. Emma and Marcus had 15 minutes. Emma didn't talk about the market cap or the user acquisition strategy. She talked about the code. She put the algorithm on the screen and explained its elegance. Diana watched, silent. "It predicts a dockworker strike in Rotterdam 2 weeks before the union votes based on cafeteria price hike chatter in their private forums." Emma explained, her voice gaining strength. "It's already rerouting 50,000 units of medical supplies through Antwerp, saving the client $4 million. "Who's the client?" Diana asked. A small nonprofit we're running the beta for. For free, Marcus chimed in. Diana Hayes stood up and walked to the window. Jason Thorne, she said. It wasn't a question. Emma tensed. Yes. I knew his father. Arrogant fool. Jason's worse. He thinks spreadsheets are a substitute for vision. She turned back. He called you useless, didn't he? Emma was stunned. How did you... I know the type. Diana said, a cold fire in her eyes. Men like Jason Thorne don't divorce women who are useful to them. They divorce women they're afraid of. She walked to her desk and tapped an intercom. Janet wired $10 million to a new entity called Oralogics. And clear my schedule for the afternoon. We're building a board of directors. Emma and Marcus just stared. Well, don't just stand there, Diana snapped, though her eyes were smiling. We have work to do. And you, she pointed at Emma, you need a new suit. You're a CEO now. The injection of $10 million from Diana Hayes wasn't just gasoline on the fire, it was rocket fuel. Oralogics exploded. They moved from the garage to a sleek, minimalist office in Soho. They hired the best data scientists Marcus knew. Coders who, like him, had been rejected by the big tech firms for not being team players. They were loyal, brilliant, and hungry. Emma was a natural leader. She wasn't a boss like Jason ruling by fear. She was a director orchestrating the complex symphony of code strategy and sales. She was relentless, working 20-hour days, but she never asked anything of her team. She wasn't doing herself. Their first major client was a mid-level shipping company, Swift Post Logistics, which was getting crushed by its larger competitors. In 6 months using Aura, Swift Post reduced its fuel costs by 30% and improved its delivery time accuracy to 99.8%. They didn't just survive, they started poaching clients from the big dogs. The industry press caught on. TechCrunch ran a story, The Aura Effect, How a Mystery Startup is Rewiring Logistics. Forbes followed, The Oracle of Shipping, Who is Oralogics. Emma stayed in the shadows. The company's official spokesperson was Marcus. The CEO was listed as E. Vance. In a world obsessed with founder worship, Emma's anonymity was her greatest weapon. She let the technology speak for itself. Meanwhile, 50 blocks north, the empire of Thorne Legacy Properties was beginning to show cracks. Jason had won the massive Hudson Yards West development bid, the largest project in New York City history. It was his crowning achievement, and it was a logistical nightmare. What do you mean the steel is stuck in Hamburg? Jason roared at his COO, a man named Robert Miller. The port strikes, sir, Miller stammered. No one saw it coming. It's going to set us back at least 2 months. The penalties are astronomical. And the concrete. Why are we paying a 40% premium? The supplier in Mexico had a plant shutdown. We had to reroute from Canada. It's just a run of bad luck, Jason. But it wasn't bad luck. It was an archaic system. The one Emma had built a decade ago, which Jason had never bothered to update. It was reactive, not predictive. Jason, now married to Serafina, was more stressed than ever. His new wife was not a quiet, supportive partner. She was a shark. She had taken a seat on his board as part of the marriage merger, and she questioned his every move. This is bleeding money, Jason, Serafina said coolly during a board meeting, tapping her stylus on the losing financial report. Your legacy system is a joke. You're building a 21st century city with 20th century tools. We're handling it, Jason snapped. No, you're not, Serafina countered. You're losing millions a day. The board is concerned. I suggest you find a solution. Yesterday. Jason was furious, humiliated. He instructed his team to find a fix. I don't care what it costs. Find me the best logistics tech on the planet. Buy it. Robert Miller, his COO, spent a week doing intensive research. He came back to Jason, his face pale but excited. Sir, I've found it, Miller said, placing a tablet on Jason's desk. It's a new company. Oralogics. Their platform is... Well, it's black magic, sir. It seems to know what's going to happen. I ran a simulation of our Hudson Yards project through their demo. It would have saved us $80 million so far. Jason looked at the name. Oralogics. Never heard of them. Are they for sale? That's the thing, sir. They're private. Very secretive. The CEO is just E. Vance. But they're backed by Diana Hayes. The name gave Jason pause. Diana Hayes was old money, but she was a tech oracle. Get them at the table, Jason ordered. I want to acquire this company. Offer them $50 million. No, $100. Whatever it takes. This E. Vance's is about to have the payday of their life. Robert Miller nodded. I've already reached out. They're hesitant to sell, but they've agreed to a partnership meeting, a final pitch. Tomorrow. Their CEO will be there. Good, Jason sneered. I'll go myself. Time to show this E. Vance what real power looks like. He was picturing some 20-something tech bro in a hoodie. He was already planning how he would intimidate him into a sale. He had no idea he was about to walk into his own execution. The meeting was set for 10 a.m. at the neutral territory of Diana Hayes' office in the Chrysler Building. Jason Thorne prided himself on making an entrance. He arrived at 10:05 a.m., a deliberate power move flanked by his COO Robert Miller and two lawyers. He strode into the conference room, a sleek, sun-filled space overlooking the city. Diana Hayes was seated at the head of the massive oak table, exuding quiet authority. To her right sat Marcus Cole, whom Jason vaguely recognized from a TechCrunch photo. To Diana's left sat the CEO. Jason stopped. His practiced, arrogant smile froze on his face. The blood drained from it. He stared his mind, unable to process the image. It was Emma. But it wasn't his Emma. The woman who met his gaze wasn't the pale, quiet wife in beige cashmere. This Emma wore a sharp navy blue Tom Ford suit that screamed authority. Her hair was pulled back in a severe, elegant chignon. Her eyes, which he had always dismissed as soft, were now cold, clear, and utterly unreadable. They held a glint of steel he had never seen before. "Jason?" she said, her voice smooth and even. Not a trace of fear, not a hint of surprise. "Thank you for coming. Please sit." Jason couldn't move. "Emma, what is this, a joke?" "I assure you, Mr. Thorne," Diana Hayes said, her voice cutting through the tension. "We do not joke about 9-figure valuations. Please sit. Your COO is holding his briefcase very awkwardly." Robert Miller, looking utterly bewildered, shuffled into a chair. Jason, on autopilot, sank into the seat opposite his ex-wife. "You," Jason stammered, pointing a finger. "You're E. Vance." "Emma Vance." "Yes," she replied, folding her hands on the table. "I am the founder and CEO of Oralogics. Marcus is my CTO." Jason's mind was a screeching tire fire. Useless. The woman he'd thrown out the decoration had built the company he was now desperate to acquire. He had wiped the server. "You stole this," he hissed, his face turning a blotchy red. "This is my IP. You stole this from Thorne Legacy. I'll have you in court by noon." Emma didn't flinch. She simply slid a tablet across the table. "You'll want to look at that. Page 4 specifically." Jason grabbed it. It was a digital file. Timestamps. Code commits. The original kernel of Aura, dated 3 years ago, backed up to a private cloud server long before the divorce. Long before he'd even met Serafina. "And if you'll turn to page 5, Emma continued, you'll see the original source code for the logistics platform Thorne Legacy currently uses. The one I wrote for you in 2015 as a wedding anniversary gift. The one you told your board you developed. I believe the digital signature on that code is mine." Jason went white. She had him. She had proof that he had not only destroyed her new work, but had built his company's foundation on her old work. He had lied to his board. He had committed fraud. "What do you want?" he whispered, the bluster gone. "You came here to acquire my company," Emma said. "The answer is no." We need your platform, Emma. Robert Miller cut in, his voice desperate. The Hudson Yards project is sinking. We're losing millions a day. Name your price. A partnership, a licensing deal, anything. Emma looked at Miller, a flicker of something almost like pity in her eyes. Mr. Miller Oralogics is already in final negotiations for a contract with Kyo Nissin Global. They are your chief competitor for the Hudson Yards West Steel contract. Once we sign with them, they will undercut you by 40%. You'd do that? Jason looked at her, searching for the woman he knew. You'd ruin me after everything I gave you. Gave me? Emma's voice was dangerously quiet. You gave me a 400-square-foot apartment and a new last name. I'll tell you what, I will license Aura to Thorn Legacy, on one condition. What? Jason breathed. You resign. Effective immediately, you will announce to the board that you are stepping down for personal reasons, and you will transfer your controlling shares into a blind trust managed by a third party, which Ms. Hayes and I will select. Jason's jaw dropped. You're insane. You're trying to steal my company. No, Emma said, standing up. I'm saving it. You are the cost, Jason, not the asset. Your arrogance, your archaic methods, and your blindness are driving Thorn Legacy into the ground. I'm offering your COO, your shareholders, and your 10,000 employees a lifeline. Jason shot to his feet. Never. I will never let you housewife, take what I built. I think you will, Emma said. And what makes you so sure? He spat. A new voice, sharp and accented, came from the doorway. Because if you don't, I'll have you arrested for fraud by 4 p.m. Jason spun around. Serafina Rothschild Thorne stood there, her arms crossed. Beside her were two men Jason didn't recognize. Serafina, Jason choked out. What are you doing here? I've been following you, darling, Serafina said, walking into the room. She completely ignored Emma and looked straight at Jason. I knew you were coming to grovel to this new tech company. I just didn't realize the drama would be this delicious. She turned to Emma. Emma Vance, a pleasure. Serafina Thorne, you are a masterpiece. What is this, Serafina? Jason demanded. This, Serafina said, is a hostile takeover. You see, Jason, while you were playing Monopolist, I was talking to your board. They're not happy with you. The Hudson Yards fiasco, the cooked books, and now this. She gestured to the tablet Emma had provided. You lied about your foundational IP, that's shareholder fraud. You've been working against me. Jason looked at his wife, his face a mask of betrayal. I'm a venture capitalist, Jason. I invest in winners. You are no longer a winner, Serafina said, her voice flat. These gentlemen are from the SEC. I took the liberty of sharing some of my concerns about Thorn Legacy's accounting. The concerns I got from Emma's old files. Jason's legs gave out. He collapsed back into his chair. Serafina had been one step ahead of everyone. She hadn't just been a trophy wife. She'd been a corporate raider in plain sight. She hadn't been targeting Emma. She'd been targeting Jason's company from the day they met. Serafina turned to Emma. So E. Vance, you want him out. I want him out. It seems we have a common goal. Let's make a deal. You give me Oralogics. I'll give you Jason's head on a platter. Together we can run this city. Jason looked on a broken man. His ex-wife and his current wife were carving up his life like a roast. Emma looked at Serafina, the woman who had in her own way been as ruthless as Jason. Then she looked at Jason, the man who had called her useless. She smiled, a real cold and calculating smile. I think you're both misunderstanding the situation, Emma said, retaking her seat. I don't want to run this city with you, Serafina. I'm here to run it myself. The conference room, once a symbol of high-powered negotiation, now felt like a pressurized vacuum. The air was thick with the silent, crackling energy of a billion-dollar chess game that had just been upended. Jason was a ghost, his face ashen, his body rigid in his chair. Serafina, for the first time, had a look of genuine predatory confusion. Her perfectly applied mask of cool control was slipping. "What?" Serafina said, her voice a low, dangerous purr that had lost its confidence. "Did you just say—" She tried to recover to frame Emma's statement as a foolish miscalculation. "Darling, I don't think you understand the offer. I have the SEC. I have the board. I am offering you a seat at the table after we dispose of him." She flicked a dismissive hand toward her husband. "Together we run his empire." Emma met her gaze, and for the first time Serafina understood she was not looking at a jilted wife. She was looking at a general. "I'm not interested in a partnership, Serafina." Emma reiterated, her voice as calm and cutting as a surgical laser. "You came here to execute a hostile takeover. You brought your own knives, you prepped your own allies. It was a good plan, but you made a critical, fatal error." "And what was that?" Serafina challenged. "You assumed Jason's company was the prize," Emma said. "It's not. It's an anchor. A monumentally expensive, badly managed, sinking anchor." Emma turned to the main monitor, the one that had been set up for their pitch. "Marcus, bring up the Hudson Yards simulation again. Run comparison model 7B, the one with the Keoneson data." Marcus, who had been watching with the quiet satisfaction of a programmer seeing his code run perfectly, typed a command. The screen lit up. It showed the Hudson Yards project visualized in a complex 3D model. A deep, bleeding red line tracked Thorn Legacy's current trajectory, project stalled penalties piling up at a rate of $5 million a day, a catastrophic $1.2 billion loss projected by Q4. Then a vibrant crystalline blue line appeared, charting an entirely different path. "This," Marcus explained, his voice filling the room, "is Keoneson Global, our new client, using the Aura platform. As we speak, their executive team is signing the contract." "What does this mean?" Emma asked, though she was directing the question to the room, her eyes fixed on the utterly broken Jason. "It means that the dockworker strike in Hamburg you thought was bad luck. Aura predicted it 3 weeks ago. The concrete shortage in Mexico, Aura saw the supplier's material cost futures spike and flagged it as a high-risk event." She stood and walked slowly toward the screen, becoming a silhouette against the glowing blue line. "It means that Keoneson Global, your chief competitor for the Hudson Yards West Steel contract, not only anticipated the steel mill strike, but had already rerouted its entire supply chain through Turkey before the strike even happened. They will deliver their materials 3 months ahead of your original schedule, and 22% under your original budget." She turned back to the room. "By Friday, when this deal is publicly announced, Thorn Legacy's stock, which is already fragile, will not just plummet. It will disintegrate. Your credit lines will be revoked. Your bonds will be downgraded to junk. Your main project will be dead, and your competitors will be using my technology to build it on your grave." She finally locked eyes with Serafina. "And your shareholders, Serafina, your board, the SEC, what exactly will they be fighting over? The scraps of a bankrupt company, your entire play, your leverage. It all hinges on Thorn Legacy having value. By the end of this week it won't. You'll have successfully taken over a shell. Congratulations." Serafina's face was chalk white. She had been outmaneuvered, outthought, and publicly humiliated. She had been playing chess while Emma was waging total war. You did this," Serafina whispered, her mind reeling. "You built a $14 billion company just to destroy him." She pointed at Jason, who looked like he hadn't breathed in 5 minutes. Emma's expression hardened. "Destroy him? No. You can't destroy a void. I am not a destroyer, Serafina. I am a builder." Her voice dropped, but it filled the room with a cold fury that was more terrifying than any scream. "For 10 years I lived in that penthouse. I managed his life, I salvaged his deals, I wrote his speeches. And he called me decoration. He called me useless while sitting on a logistics platform I built in my spare time, a platform he was too arrogant and too ignorant to even ask me about. He runs a multi-billion-dollar corporation based on who he can bully in a meeting and how loud he can yell. she said, her voice ringing with finality, is useless. Jason flinched as if she had struck him. The word, his word, was now a weapon turned back on him. I built Aura from the ashes of the life he burned down, Emma continued. And today I'm not here to destroy his company. I'm here to save it from him. Robert Miller, the COO who had been watching this all unfold like a tennis match between gods, finally found his voice. It was shaky, desperate. Ms. Vance, Emma, please, if what you're saying is true, the company, my teams. There are 10,000 employees who had nothing to do with this. You just let them all go under. Emma's gaze softened instantly as she looked at him. No, Mr. Miller. Your teams, the engineers, the architects, the project managers, they are the only valuable asset Thorn Legacy has left. Jason was the liability. And that, she said, turning her attention back to the table, is why I am not here for a licensing deal, or a partnership, or an acquisition. She paused, letting the weight of the moment fill the room, letting every person hang on her next word. I am here to announce a merger. Oralogix, which Forbes just valued at $14 billion, will be acquiring Thorn Legacy properties. For $1. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the sound of a paradigm shattering. Jason looked up, his eyes wide and uncomprehending. A merger? A rescue, Emma corrected him. It's an act of mercy. We absorb your monumental debt. We save your projects. We keep your employees, Mr. Miller. We integrate the Aora platform across your entire infrastructure, making Thorn Legacy profitable within 6 months. The name will survive, but it will be as a wholly owned subsidiary of Oralogix. Serafina let out a dry, bitter laugh. The board, Jason's board. They'll never approve this. It's an insult. It's a public execution. They'll fight you. Oh, they'll approve it, dear, Diana Hayes chimed in, speaking for the first time in an hour. Her voice was laced with amused satisfaction. You see, Serafina, while you were busy plotting a palace coup, I was busy buying. I've been quietly acquiring Thorn Legacy stock at its loser price for the last 6 months every time Jason's arrogance caused another dip. I am now the second largest shareholder right after Jason himself. She steepled her fingers, her gray eyes glittering. This merger, I'm voting yes. And my vote, along with the promise of saving the company from total annihilation, will lead the rest of the terrified rats right off Jason's sinking ship and onto Emma's lifeboat. You have no power here. Serafina's last ember of hope died. She was trapped. Emma walked slowly, deliberately, until she stood directly in front of her ex-husband. He was staring at the table, a broken man. She knelt just as he had forced her to feel small, so she was at eye level with the collapsed titan. As for you, Jason, she said, her voice a soft private whisper that was somehow the loudest thing in the room, you will sign over your controlling shares. Not to a blind trust, not to the company. You will sign them over to me. To Emma Vance, personally. Jason's head snapped up, his eyes pleading. Emma, please. In exchange, she continued, ignoring him, my signature will go on a private document. An agreement stating that Oralogix will not pursue criminal charges against you for the IP theft of my original code. I will not release the file on page 5 of that tablet, the one that proves you committed shareholder fraud by lying about your foundational IP. I will give you my silence. She stood up, towering over him. You will walk out of this building with nothing but the clothes you're wearing and a new ironclad non-disclosure agreement, an NDA that forbids you from ever saying my name or your own in a business context again. You will cease to exist. He heard it. He heard the echo of his own words. The terms of her exile now returned to him with perfect, devastating precision. He choked, you're useless. Emma offered, her voice devoid of all emotion. A cost, not an asset. A phase. She turned away from him. And you, Serafina. Serafina, who had already risen ready to flee, froze. You are a brilliant strategist. Ruthless. I can respect that. But you backed the wrong horse. Those SEC agents you brought. Emma smiled a real cold and calculating smile. You can tell them that the new CEO of Thorn Aura Dynamics will cooperate fully with their investigation. I'm sure they'll be very interested in the trades you made based on the insider information you gathered while you were busy plotting with the board. I imagine your time off the board will be quite permanent. Serafina, for the first time in her life, was speechless. She had been surgically, brilliantly, and completely removed from the equation. Emma slid a single piece of paper and a heavy gold pen across the oak table to Jason. It was the share transfer agreement. Jason Thorne stared at it. This was the end. The woman he had discarded, the decoration he had thrown away, had just dismantled his entire life in under an hour, using only her mind and his own arrogance against him. He saw the power, the brilliance, and the ice-cold justice. He saw the woman who had been there all along, the one he had been too blind to see. His hand shaking picked up the pen. The sound of the scratchy nib on the thick paper was the only sound. It was the sound of an empire falling. He signed his name. He signed his legacy away. Emma took the paper from his hand. She didn't look at it. She didn't look at him. She simply turned to Marcus and Diana. It's done. Let's get to work. The moment the gold-nibbed pen left the paper, the suffocating tension in the room didn't just break. It evaporated. Jason Thorne slumped in his chair, not just a defeated CEO, but a hollow man. The signature had cost him his last ounce of adrenaline, leaving a gray, empty vessel. Serafina, on the other hand, was vibrating with a frigid, impotent rage. She watched Emma calmly take the document, fold it once, and slide it into a leather portfolio. Well, Serafina spat, her voice a strained whisper. You have your pound of flesh. I hope it keeps you warm. Emma didn't even look at her. She snapped the portfolio shut. Marcus, please show Ms. Hayes to her car. I'll be down in a moment. She then turned not to her fallen enemies, but to the one man in the room who still mattered. Mr. Miller? Robert Miller, who looked as though he'd just survived a plane crash, stood straighter. Yes, Ms. Vance. The first all-hands meeting for Thorne Legacy staff is at 7 a.m. tomorrow. I'll need you to prep the entire executive leadership team. I want a full, unredacted report on all active projects, liabilities, and most importantly, all personnel. I want to know every architect, every engineer, and every project manager we have. Of course. Miller stammered, his mind already racing. He was being given orders. He had a purpose. He realized with a jolt, employed. Good, Emma said. I'll see you there. This exchange was the final brutal blow for Jason. He wasn't even an afterthought. He was simply over. His company was moving on without him before he had even left the room. You can't just... Serafina began, but Emma held up a hand. It's done, Emma said, her voice final. She nodded to the SEC agents who were still standing by the door, quiet witnesses to the corporate execution. Gentlemen, I believe Mrs. Thorne has some information for you regarding her concerns. I, as the new acting head of the company, will be in touch with your superiors tomorrow to schedule a full and transparent audit. We have nothing to hide. This one simple statement sealed Serafina's fate. Emma had framed herself as the transparent reformer, and Serafina as the disgruntled, possibly complicit party. The agents turned their cool, appraising gazes on her. Serafina Rothschild Thorne, the shark, was now chum. A silent security guard summoned by Diana's assistant appeared at the door. He gestured politely to Jason. Jason stood, his custom-tailored suit hanging on him like a shroud. He walked out of the room, past the art he had bought, past the window overlooking the city he had claimed, and did not look back. He was a ghost, and he knew it. The fallout was immediate and seismic. The next morning, the financial world choked on its coffee. The Wall Street Journal headline was a cannon shot, The war merger tech oracle Oralogics acquires ailing giant Thorne legacy in shocking restructure. Jason Thorne ousted. The story was a masterpiece of controlled narrative. It painted a picture of a legacy company, Thorne Legacy Properties, that had been driven to the brink of insolvency by the reckless and archaic leadership of its founder. It detailed the spiraling losses of the Hudson Yards West project, the failure to adapt the hemorrhaging of cash. Then it introduced the savior Oralogics, the secretive, brilliant AI company that had, in an act of profound strategic mercy, acquired the entire corporation for a symbolic dollar-saving 10,000 jobs and absorbing billions in debt. But it was the second-page story in Bloomberg that broke the internet. The oracle has a name. E. Vance is Emma Vance, ex-wife of ousted CEO Jason Thorne. The narrative exploded. It was electric. Every talk show, every podcast, every financial blog was dominated by the story. The quiet, invisible socialite, the decoration Jason had so publicly discarded, was the secret architect of the most disruptive technology in decades. The story of her being thrown out, her work wiped, and her rise from a garage in Queens. It wasn't just a business story. It was a legend. Emma Vance became an instant global icon of resilience and quiet, terrifying competence. The fates of the fallen were swift. Jason Thorne vanished. True to Emma's word, he was erased. The ironclad NDA combined with the public humiliation muzzled him completely. He was spotted once by a paparazzi lens at a small cafe in the Cayman Islands, looking gray-aged and utterly average. He was no longer a titan. He was a "where are they now" story. The exclusive clubs he belonged to, the Metropolitan, the Union, all quietly revoked his membership, citing conduct unbecoming. He wasn't just broke. He was, for a man built on ego, something far worse: irrelevant. Serafina Rothschild Thorne, as predicted, fought. She hired the most expensive legal team in New York, claiming the merger was predatory. But she had been outplayed. Emma and Diana Hayes were prepared. Emma, in her first act as CEO, opened the books completely to the SEC. This transparency revealed not only Jason's fraud, but also Serafina's own questionable trades and her attempts to leverage the board. The multiple shareholder lawsuits which Serafina had encouraged pivoted and targeted her as a board member who had breached her fiduciary duty. She was trapped in a legal quagmire of her own making, spending the next 3 years, and what was left of her fortune, fending off charges. Her reputation as a winner was permanently shattered. But Emma wasn't focused on the past. She was focused on the future. The day after the merger, she walked into the penthouse headquarters at 15 Central Park West. The staff was terrified, lined up in the lobby expecting a purge. Emma walked to the center of the vast marble hall, Robert Miller at her side. She looked at the anxious faces. "Good morning," she said, her voice amplified by the room's acoustics. "My name is Emma Vance. You all knew my predecessor. You knew his way of doing things. As of today, that way is over." She paused. "I'm not here to fire you. I'm here to unleash you. For too long, this company has been run as a one-man show. It has relied on ego instead of data. That ends now. The Aura platform is the new heart of this company. But you," she said, making eye contact with the lead architects and engineers, "you are its blood. I'm not here to save this company. I'm here to give you the tools to save it yourselves." The first thing she did was rebrand Thorne Aura Dynamics. The press called it a master stroke of branding. She kept the Thorne name, a deliberate move to show the 10,000 employees that their legacy, their work, their projects was worth saving. She had only purged the man, not the mission. Aura was the new guiding principle: intelligence, data, and predictive power. The Arctic White office, once a cold museum to one man's ego, was transformed. She tore down the walls, creating open-plan innovation hubs. Massive wall-sized data screens were installed, streaming Aura's real-time logistics and market predictions. The atmosphere changed from fear to a buzzing electric energy. And in a small, windowless room behind the main kitchen, her old hobby closet, she created the Founder's Room. It was preserved exactly as it had been, only now behind glass. Her old second-hand laptop, a stained coffee mug, and a single-framed packet of instant ramen noodles. Below it, a small brass plaque read, "Never forget where you started, and never let anyone else define where you're going." It became a pilgrimage site for new hires. Her crowning achievement was the Hudson Yards West project, the very thing that had sunk Jason. She didn't just save it, she made it a global showpiece. She personally flew to Tokyo and renegotiated the deal with Kyo Nissan, turning her former competitor into her biggest partner. Using Aura, she rerouted the entire global supply chain, optimizing every single screw, every pane of glass. The project was finished 3 months ahead of its new schedule and $200 million under the revised budget. It was an unprecedented triumph that silenced every critic. 1 year later, Forbes released its annual World's Most Powerful People issue. The cover was Emma Vance. She wasn't pictured in an office. She stood on the 100th floor observation deck of the newly completed Thorn Aura Tower at Hudson Yards West. The wind whipped her hair, but her gaze was steady. Behind her, the New York skyline, her skyline fanned out like a kingdom she had not inherited, but built. The headline was simple, bold, and universe-altering. Emma Vance, at 34, the youngest CEO in the country, didn't just break the glass ceiling, she built a new one. Inside, the feature story detailed her incredible journey. But it was the final paragraph, a direct quote from Emma, that was pinned to 1 million bulletin boards and inspiration blogs by the end of the day. "For 10 years, she said, her voice clear in the recording, I was told I was a support system. I was decoration. I was useless. It's easy to believe the labels people give you, especially when they're the only voices you're allowed to hear. But a label is just a word. It's not a destiny. The world is built by people who were told they couldn't. The future is built by those who are underestimated. My advice, let them underestimate you. Let them call you useless. Let them throw you away. Let them lock you in a gilded cage. They'll forget that cages have locks, and locks have keys, and they just handed you all the time in the world to find it. Then, build your empire from the ashes. And don't forget to send them an invitation to the grand opening." And that is the incredible story of Emma Vance. She was pushed out, dismissed, and left with nothing. But they forgot one thing: you can't erase a brilliant mind. Her story proves that your value isn't determined by what someone else says about you. It's determined by what you do when no one is watching. What did you think of Jason's downfall? Were you shocked by Serafina's ultimate play? Let me know your favorite twist in the comments below. If you love this story of resilience and ultimate triumph, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And if you want more true-life dramas and incredible stories of people who turn their lives around, make sure you subscribe and ring that notification bell. You won't want to miss what we have coming up next. Thank you for listening.